Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Cybersecurity as a Service overview for Washington State Hospital Association members. Today with us, we have Jacob Wheeler, the Senior Solution Architect with CloudWave, and Cynthia Hay from Washington Hospital Services. I'm Laura Pursley, the Marketing Director at CloudWave, and I'll be the moderator for today. If you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please enter those in the questions pane, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia to do a brief introduction before Jacob gets started.
Thanks, Laura. Hi again, everyone. My name is Cynthia Hay, and I'm the Director of Business Solutions for Washington Hospital Services, which is a subsidiary of the Washington State Hospital Association. So thanks again for attending the special education session exclusively for our hospital members. And so, like Laura said, I'm going to be providing a little bit of background on our partnership with Sensato. And so we are super pleased to have had Sensato on board as a preferred partner for several years. If you're not familiar with the Preferred Partner Program, our partners provide our member hospitals with approved products and services to help our members improve operational efficiencies, reduce costs, and deliver high-quality care. And each one of our partners goes through a comprehensive evaluation process to ensure that they meet and maintain the high standards of quality and service. And because we're not cybersecurity experts, we asked the experts to help us find the best firm with who to partner. We surveyed over a dozen hospital IT leaders to learn about the firms that they've used in the past or were familiar with. And we invited these firms to apply to be our exclusive partner. And a group of 6 hospital IT leaders helped us review all those applications. So this is not a short process. Ultimately, they decided that Sensato was the best. And so what sets them apart is their healthcare focus, the extensive free education they provide, like today's program, and the Cybersecurity Insider program, and their ability to protect, connected peripheral devices, the variety of services they offer, their reputation, and their customer service track record. And several of our hospital members have engaged with one or more of Sensato's services over the years. So thanks, Laura, for the opportunity to toot your horn, and the WHS preferred partners are very pleased to have you on board. So now I will hand it off to you, Jacob.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Thank you very much, Laura. So as Laura mentioned, my name is Jacob Wheeler. I am a senior solution architect here at CloudWave Sensato, and I've been here for about 10 years, previously in a role running the product management department, and now out in the field in a more customer-facing role where I get to speak to customers, learn how their cybersecurity program is doing, and what could we do to fill any gaps that exist therein. So today, I'm going to walk you through an overview of our Cybersecurity as a Service offering. For your sake and for my sake, I'm going to refer to this as CAS from here on out, CAAS, Cybersecurity as a Service. That's going to save both of us a lot of time and most of all me a lot of breath. As Cynthia mentioned, we do a lot of free educational content, and I'm going to mention some of that and provide you links to some of that within this presentation. But today specifically, I'm going to walk through an overview of our comprehensive Cybersecurity as a Service offering. Now, before I do that, just a couple notes on who we are. And I think most of you are familiar with Sensato CloudWave and understand who we are, what we do. So I'm not going to give you the full spiel here. There are just a couple things I wanted to point out. You know, Cynthia mentioned that we are a healthcare specific cybersecurity firm, and really we were the first. We aren't the only any longer, but we take that healthcare specific claim very seriously. And there are 2 points here I want to draw your attention to. And first is our relationship with the Department of Homeland Security. So when we founded an information sharing and analysis organization with DHS, it was really about sharing threat intelligence. It was understanding what they're seeing in the industry, what are the healthcare attacks that are coming, and then we would share back with them what we're seeing, what works, what doesn't work in a healthcare situation, how we have to treat the healthcare vertical differently than any other vertical. Now, as part of that partnership, we actually do have access to something called the DHS hunt teams. These are the 3 top-level cybersecurity incident response teams run by the Department of Homeland Security. They're strategically placed around the country, and these are the people you call when a national security threat level cybersecurity event is happening. Now, that sounds cool, and it is a great resource to have in your back pocket, but you never want to be in a situation where that's the team we're calling. If we're calling them, then something massive is occurring, patients are dying, it is a statewide or countrywide incident. So as cool as that sounds, it's not something we ever want to have to use, but we do have access to them. The second one I would like to point out is our relationship with the FDA. Our relationship with the FDA contains a few different parts. We have a memorandum of understanding, and we're the only for-profit cybersecurity firm that has an MOU with the FDA. And what this states, and this is publicly available, you can read it if you'd like. There's a screen capture of it later in this presentation, and we're happy to provide these slides with you. But what this MOU states is that we are the firm, we are the company that the FDA calls when they need help. When there's an incident targeting medical devices, and they've discovered a new exploit and they need someone to evaluate the exploit, triage how serious it is, come up with a plan, give them the status that they need to be telling hospitals. We are the company the FDA calls. We sort of help them define, what's the recommendations on what's working and what doesn't work, how you have to treat medical devices separately. And this is something we do with the FDA absolutely free of charge. This is part of being a healthcare company, we think, is a way to give back to the community. So you see here also a lot of other hospital associations we partner with, and you have this timeline of events. So I'm not going to belabor this too much. I just hope that you understand when I say healthcare specific, it's about more than just selling products to hospitals. It's really about being a healthcare company. So what do we do? What does Sensato offer? Well, in general, I'd say we offer a portfolio of services that you would expect out of a for-profit cybersecurity company. And we're not really here to talk about all of these today. From our advisory services, or virtual CISO, our risk assessments, our 2 training and testing for application pen testing, or even you have developers who want to teach them how to write secure code, we could come in and do that. The point here is that we've been delivering these types of services for a decade now, and all of the lessons we've learned, all of the successes and failures we've seen in cybersecurity programs at hospitals have been distilled and have put into this comprehensive program I'm going to share with you today. So why work with Sensato? At Sensato, we actually have a 2-part thesis. And the first part is that everything we do should help our customers comply with best practices and municipal, state, federal regulations, detect threats quickly, and then respond to them effectively and efficiently. Comply, detect, respond is going to be a framework that you'll hear me echo throughout this presentation. And to some degree, this probably doesn't strike you as particularly novel. If you've seen any cybersecurity presentation of the past 10 years, they will have some slide that sounds very much like this, comply, detect, respond. And we actually think that's correct. That is the baseline, but a lot of places really stop there. But that brings us to the second part of our thesis, which is that every recommendation we make, every feature we publish, should to some degree lower or reduce your legal liability and increase your legal defensibility. in the event that a breach does occur. You know, people in this industry are very fond of saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I find that to be a tad cynical. I prefer to say it might not be everyone, but it could be anyone. And so legitimate thought must be given to what is your position going to look like after the incident. The dust has settled, you're back up and running, and then the phone calls start, the subpoenas start, and OCR comes in and starts doing their evaluation. Have you put yourself in the best position that's going to reduce as much as possible your liability and increase your legal defensibility? And this is something we give a lot of thought to. And you're going to see that throughout this presentation. I'll mention reducing your legal liability a lot. So what is our Cybersecurity as a Service program? This program really has three main parts to it. The CloudWave Nightingale is our software platform that we have developed. Our 24/7 Cybersecurity Tactical Operations Center, the people monitoring and running this platform. And then strategy, guidance, and compliance. Our widgets is a library of strategic guidance content that all of our CAS customers have access to. A quick point here on pricing. I'm going to talk about a lot of features, a lot of content that's included in this program. And the way we think about pricing for CAS is sort of like a buffet. We give you one price and everything is included. You don't have to use every feature. When you go to the buffet and you see the Brussels sprouts and you're not a fan of Brussels sprouts, well, you don't have to eat them. But your price to get into the buffet was the same. So that's sort of how we think about features and functionality in our program. Some customers use absolutely everything. A lot of customers don't, and I'm going to talk about some of those items as we progress through. A quick note before I really dive deep into the meat and potatoes here, to continue the food analogy, I suppose. We literally developed the manual. We wrote the book on medical device cybersecurity. John Gomez, our president and chief security officer, wrote the medical device cybersecurity field manual. This is also a field manual that you can get through the FDA. They use ours as well. And if you'd like a free copy, we're happy to send this to you. This is a 30-page actionable manual that talks about how securing a medical device is different than securing, say, a Linux server in your data center. Why do you have to think about that differently? And what are some real-world actionable things you could do today to put yourself in a better situation to secure these medical devices? So highly recommend you reach out. We provide this free of charge. You could contact us after or send a note to this email address, and we'd be happy to get it to you. All right, so let's dive into the Nightingale platform. So the Nightingale cybersecurity platform is a fully integrated platform that supports the needs of critical infrastructure and its cybersecurity. It really does follow this comply, detect, respond thesis, and really allows you and us to have a single pane of glass, that common operating picture. I want to note here that this is a software platform that we developed. It's our product managers, it's our developers, it's our software engineers. So we aren't white labeling an industry product. So under the covers, there isn't some common industry tool that we're just providing services on top of. This is a platform we wrote, and we made that decision early, and we thought it was important because we didn't want to be beholden to someone else's development roadmap, especially if they were a tool that isn't healthcare specific, right? With all of the threat intelligence we're seeing, which is we often are the first ones to see indicators of compromise. We knew that we needed to be more agile than that. We couldn't submit a feature request, write a business case, have that approved, and then be told that that feature would be available in the next release cycle that's 18 months away. That's just that's too slow. The threats that are occurring in healthcare are adapting far too rapidly for that to be a sustainable model. So we knew we had to write our own, and so we did. On that, I'm not going to spend time here going through it. I may refer back to this slide if we get questions about architecture, or if you'd like to reach out and have a more technical deep dive, we're absolutely happy to do that. This is a sort of a high-level overview of how we've architected our software platform. So what does Nightingale include? Nightingale really is comprised of 4 main components. There's a compliance manager, a detection manager, and a response manager, obviously echoing the part 1 of our thesis: comply, detect, respond. And I'm going to step through these managers with you here in a minute, but this 4th piece is absolutely critical as well. This is Nightingale Connect. Nightingale Connect is our high-performance API engine, which connects all of these assets between these managers. So anything in the compliance manager is correlated with detection manager and response manager, so that we really understand an asset in your environment that's linked to an alert that comes in that allows our response team to have all of the pertinent information at our fingertips when we need it. So it connects everything we've got in these 3 managers, but it also connects with your third-party systems. So if you have security systems that you have in place and you like and you're running, we can ingest data from those systems. Say you're running an EPP on your endpoints that you really like, we can connect to them via our API and get those alerts ourselves, so that our 24/7 response team can see everything happening in your environment, even if the alert or the detection doesn't come through one of our sensors and it comes through one of your other platforms. This really provides us and you that single common operating picture across your entire environment. All right, so let's talk about the compliance manager. The compliance manager is an aspect of Nightingale we built, and it's got 4 components, and I'm going to chat about each of these. But I want to start with an overview of why we bothered. Why did we include a maturity manager, a risk register, a policy exception, threat profile registers? A lot of you will have third-party tools that are doing these, right? That are best of breed, purpose-built applications to do, enterprise risk management. Now, and that's fair enough. But we decided to include this for 2 reasons. The first is that all of this is integrated into our platform, so that if there's a risk in the risk register, and we get an alert, and if it's tied to that risk, that's information we're going to have immediately. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about why that speed of having relevant data is so critical. So part 1 is that all of this, if you fill it out, will be tied to our detection software, which allows us to understand a threat or an alert far faster and more comprehensively. But the second is that these are also the categories of things that we've seen customers more often than not fail when it came time to do our HIPAA assessments, our NIST maturity models. It's a lot of this enterprise risk management, noting policy exceptions and cybersecurity risks. So we decided, if we're going to offer a comprehensive program, this is some of the stuff that we need to do, up front. So C2M2 Maturity Manager. This is a module that allows you to really quickly quantify the maturity of your cybersecurity program. So what we did is we took the Department of Energy's C2M2 model. By the way, that stands for cybersecurity capability maturity model. So 2 C's, 2 M's. So we just say C2M2. It looks at 10 domains with 3 levels of maturity. The way we see customers use this more often than not is they get their teams in a room, take a couple hours, maybe buy them lunch, and go through these 10 domains. And then you see this, you get this dashboard on the left with all the drill down information as you need it. Red means there's work to be done. Green means things are pretty good. And it really gets you that baseline. And then after you have that baseline, you can present that to your board and use it as the foundation of an investment strategy. You can come back periodically and update it, and then you can show progress. We have customers that do this monthly, quarterly, annually, etc. I will note, by the way, we can offer C2M2 as an advisory service. So we will come in and help you walk through this process and ask all the questions, help you gather information, plug it in. If we do that as an advisory service, it's an additional fee. But as part of CAS, you get access to this module that you can do this as a self-service. And most of our customers do end up using this at least once, and then meet periodically to keep it updated. Similarly, risk registers. This allows you to log risks in your environment as part of your enterprise risk management program. The probability of severity, you classify high, low, medium. And again, because of Nightingale Connect, we will have access to this when an alert comes in. If it's tied to a risk or to a policy exception or to a threat, we'll see that immediately. Policy exceptions are important. You're always going to have some. Maybe you have applications that don't support MFA. Maybe you have patient data in an application, the OEM has gone out of business, and so they never updated it to run on a 64-bit operating system, right? So you can't put that on the latest version of Windows, so you still have to have a couple Windows 2003 servers sitting around, right? So policy exceptions exist, but it's critical to document them, to document what mitigating controls do you have in place for these in the event that that's the avenue through which a breach may occur. Noting that you knew about it and that you are attempting to mitigate it with the following controls goes a long way to reduce your liability in the course of that event. And then again, if we see an alert that comes through tied to an asset that has a policy exception to it, that's going to inform our response. And again, a threat profile register. So you're sort of getting a sense here that we're including modules that sort of allow you to fill them out, to understand the maturity of your model and get an understanding of your environment for you and for our response teams. So this is the Nightingale Compliance Manager. Now let's talk a little bit about the Detection Manager. And I'd say this is, when I get called in to talk about what we do around cybersecurity, this is usually the thing everyone expects me to spend the most amount of time on, which is fair enough, right? And detecting threats is obviously important. It's all the other stuff that people are usually surprised by. So I'm going to talk about these 6 things. But think of this sort of as a funnel. That we're going to start with the most widely applicable item, and then every item as I move on gets a little bit more narrow. And it's about having overlapping services to attempt to catch threats that may be able to evade 1 or 2 detection levels, but not all of them. So network intrusion detection. We put sentinels, these are network monitors on your network, and we do real-time deep packet inspection. Now, I want to pause here for a second because there are a lot of industry tools that say they're doing deep packet inspection, and what they're doing is they're looking at a packet header. They're going to say, all right, this is a SSL packet, great. Where it's coming from, where it's going to, and what it thinks the payload is. That's really not deep packet inspection. what we do is we're going to burst the entire packet and scan this for anomalies. We have written a library of protocol analyzers that if the network traffic is one of these protocols, I think we're above 60 right now. We keep adding to this. We're going to be able to see the entire contents of this network traffic and scan it far more thoroughly. We have a lot of the industry protocols which you would expect, but we've also written specific healthcare protocols, including DICOM and HL7. So if it's DICOM traffic or HL7 traffic, we're going to be able to do this as well. And again, that's part of being a healthcare company. So we're going to see all of your traffic. We're going to position our monitors so that we see all east-west, all north-south traffic. And so anything moving on your network, we're going to be able to take a look at. But network traffic is always moving from a thing to another thing, right? There's always a source and destination. And so we also do host intrusion detection. And this is done to monitor host level attacks and attempts. So we're going to be looking at for BIOS changes, host file level integrity, memory injections, right? So this is done with a really lightweight agent and that's put on your host. Now, I know that can be kind of scary to think about putting agents on your hosts. No matter what the OEM says about it being lightweight, there's always some concern about performance degradation, and we get that, and we take that seriously. So these agents they consume less than 0.001% of CPU. They're sending it to a different device on your network that's doing the heavy analysis. So we're not taxing these hosts at all. But it is important to have an agent there to understand is that host being compromised. We also do vulnerability detection. So this is your sort of standard CVSS level vulnerability assessment and risk correlation. So we'll scan at agreed upon schedules and locations. Then that's run out of our CTOC as well. They'll do prioritization and triage and recommendations on the vulnerabilities we find. A note here, we do have a specific program within CAS for vulnerability scanning of medical devices, of your IoT and of your patient, your caregiving devices. And you have to do that differently. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I talk about our CTOC, how we handle all of the management of doing medical device scanning. We also include deception technologies. So these are honeypots and honey tokens. Honeypots can take many different forms. We deploy level 1 honeypots, and these really are an attacker's sort of worst case scenario. And that's actually how this was born out. We asked the gentleman who leads our penetration testing group, if you're getting in and you're trying to compromise a hospital, what's the thing that worries you? Is it their XDR system? Is it their firewall? And he kept shrugging and saying, no, really, not really. It's a honeypot. I don't know the host I'm about to compromise, whether or not that's a real asset or that's a honeypot. And so these are really effective at combating the advanced persistent threat attacks, these attacks that are in your system for months before they actually execute an attack. So a honeypot is just a fake server that sits there, and if anyone touches it, we get an immediate alert, because the only people that will touch it are attackers that are jumping around looking for more assets. Everyone else knows to avoid them. And during implementation, we work through your AV scans and things like that to avoid false positives. And they just sit there waiting for someone to try to compromise them. And it's simple, but an incredibly powerful tool for these APT style attacks. We also include an asset management database. So identifying your assets and tracking them, and we support a high value target and asset valuation. If you think about a medical device and you think about a a ventilator in an ICU room that's actively being used versus some sort of blood pressure monitor in a vacant room. These assets have different values, and if you get an alert on a ventilator that's providing care to a patient, your response to that alert has to be different than your response to an alert on a lower value target. And this is sort of one of the things we support and we work through. And this is all about enabling a patient first incident response theme. And so we classify assets according to value, and we support sort of high value targets, which may not be most readily apparent, but this is sort of what we work through with our customers to understand their environment and assign asset valuation. And we also do asset fingerprinting, over 35,000 fingerprints from hardware, IoT, medical devices. If something pops up on your network, we're going to know what it is as soon as we scan it. So this is our Nightingale detection manager. One note on our approach to threat intelligence. So the Sensado threat intelligence framework has multiple steps, and CAS customers get access to this as part of it. Our level one is our indicators of compromise, right? So we maintain a robust industry catalog of indicators of compromise. We update that. We push them down to our identification, our agents and our sentinels to understand if any of these are apply to anything in your environment. Second are TAC alerts. So if we receive an alert for a new vulnerability found, we will perform an evaluation of this vulnerability, and then we will send you an email that classifies the vulnerability, walks you through how severe it is, and makes a recommendation for how you could patch that vulnerability, for instance. These are ad hoc. You'll go months without getting them. You might get 3 in a week. It's just as they come in. If we evaluate them and think they're necessary for our customers to see, we'll send them out. So we're not spamming you. These are really just as needed. And then the top level of our threat intelligence framework are something we call threat intelligence briefings. So these are sort of open meetings that we'll hold. We'll throw up a web conference. Any of our customers can hop in, ask questions, get the rundown of what's going on, and then they can leave. This is for large scale, immediate, or critical threats or vulnerabilities. Maybe in a new ransomware gang was found, and we know that they're about to target healthcare in the United States. Maybe an absolutely critical vulnerability was found. I think the last time I remember doing one of these, it was the Log4j issue, where it was the VMware memory leak issue from a couple years ago. I remember that was a frantic sort of 80 hours of patching. We pretty much did nothing else for that weekend. So that's a threat intelligence briefing that all of our customers are invited to. So that's the Nightingale threat intelligence framework. Indicators of compromise, TAC alerts, and threat intelligence briefings. So we've done comply, we've done detect, and so obviously this is the Nightingale response manager. And the response manager is our software features that really enable our organizations to respond to alerts and attacks as quickly and effectively as possible. So as part of Nightingale, active response allows for an automated, in sometimes limited ways, an automated response. So active response allows you, if you desire, to deploy automated responses to certain types of alerts. So for instance, if you have if we see an alert that from one of our HIDS agents, our host intrusion detection system, that one of your hosts is being compromised, you might want to automatically kick off a script that removes that host from the network, and isolate it. So we could do that with active response. You provide a script that will remove that shut down those NICs and remove that host from the environment. We can call that, and we can set up the logic that if we see a memory injection alert on a host, that will call this script, the host gets removed from the network. So not all of our customers feel comfortable with automated response in that way. Attacks can often look so different that they would rather a human being evaluate the information on hand, and then make that decision themselves. But if there are circumstances that you'd prefer automated, we have support for that. SecCon support is unique to us. This really allows our customers, if they wish to orchestrate an organizational-wide understanding. So SecCon is borrowed from DHS, who uses DEFCON. You've heard of defense conditions. We use this with security conditions. Similarly, your 1 through 5, like DEFCON, 5 is there's an active attack going on right now, and SecCon 1 is everything's normal, right? And there are various levels. SecCon 2 might be your hospital's name came up in a target list that DHS sent us from a ransomware gang in China, for instance, right? We might up you to SecCon 2, and that means we temporarily disable any whitelisted networks for MFA, or whatever the case may be. It really allows your organization to understand the current state of the threat. Incident response management and forensic support. So Nightingale, with all of our logging, provides a lot of historical analysis and IP watch, which can help you do the forensic support in the immediate aftermath of an incident, to help with the investigation. I'd say our sweet spot for incident response and tactical forensics is that first 72 hours, where we're going to have a lot of the correct and most pertinent data. After that, generally your cybersecurity insurance company is going to call in their own team to do the more thorough, and we're happy to coordinate with them and hand off this information. But this software allows us to gather that and present it in an easy to understand way. So that is Nightingale. That is sort of Sensado Nightingale cybersecurity platform. Compliance manager, detection manager, and our response manager. So I want to talk a little bit about our SOC or our CTOC. The first thing we did was we wrote the software. We wrote Nightingale, and for a while that's what we sold. And then our customers started coming to us and asking us, saying, you should consider building a SOC. And that sort of surprised us. There were a lot of SOC services out there. So what would really be gained by us throwing our hat into that ring? So we took some time and we took a look at the market. Did some analysis. I'd realized that a lot of the SOC offerings at the time we felt really weren't fit for purpose. And it came down to one of two things. One is that a lot of them weren't healthcare specific. So the person getting an alert or receiving your phone call may have just hung up with a department store or a clothing manufacturer in California. And the second is that so many incident response playbooks and protocols and frameworks that these SOCs were using were about protecting data and getting systems back online. And I'm not going to stand here and say that that's not important, right? Data, you do need to protect data. You do need to get your applications back online. But when you're doing incident response for a hospital, for us, it's about the patient. It is taking a patient first approach to responding to a cybersecurity incident, because it's the patients at the end of the day that are most at risk. So for that reason, we launched our CTOC, and we call it a CTOC, the Tactical Operations Center, deliberately in order to differentiate on those two levels. It is a 24/7, 365 healthcare specific CTOC that uses a patient first incident response strategy. When you're responding to an incident, one of the first things you need to do is to ascertain two things: the violence and the velocity of the attack. So violence is what is the behavior? What is it actually doing? And this could scale from it's commandeered a printer and is printing inappropriate pictures, to it's actually disabling fans, overheating the CPU, and frying chipsets. We've seen the entire gamut. But the other is the velocity of the attack. Is it is there someone with hands on keyboard that's moving from host to host, or is it a self-propagating malware? And on the top end of this, the high velocity attacks, from the moment the attack is launched to the moment that they have succeeded in their goal, whatever that goal is, encrypted an entire network, exfiltrated a certain number of patient records, on average, it takes the attacker just over 14 minutes. So from the time you get that first indicator of compromise to the time that they're done in a high velocity attack, you have just under a quarter of an hour. Now it really doesn't matter on how large the environment is. That's sort of the nature of exponential growth of self-propagation. One host infects 2, then infects 4, then infects 8. Is that no matter the size of the environment, it'll come down to about 14 minutes. A few years ago, when Nuance got hit, it was 36,000 hosts across 14 countries, and it took 14 minutes and 2 seconds. So I say this not to say there's nothing we can do, but just to underline how important it is to have a framework in place that's going to detect these quickly and respond effectively and efficiently. So that brings us to the Sensado CTOC. It's not just a SOC, it's a 24/7 tactical operations center. It's really meant to be a force multiplier for your team, so that your team doesn't need to be doing all of the hunting down an immediate triage of all the alerts that come in, right? That's the stuff that the CTOC is going to do. And then when there's an actionable threat, we get involved, we lead the incident response, and we're with you every step of the way. So some high level services here, 24/7 sort of naturally. I still do talk about this. I still run into plenty of SOCs, even in healthcare, that are 8 to 5. We're 24/7. The threats aren't sleeping. They're attacking at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, not 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Medical device vulnerability scanning, again, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when you're doing medical device scanning, there are special applications you have to think about. You can't just schedule it and then assume when the time comes that it's still a good time to scan. We do all of that project work and coordination and rescheduling as necessary. But primarily, we are your IR and coordination team. These incidents take place in minutes, and so we're going to lead that with a time-based, patient-centric approach. Included in this, which is necessary, is at least one per year, 90-minute tabletop simulation, where we're going to come in, we'll take the role of the attacker, and sort of walk through a scenario. And this is critical not only for you, but for us as well. It's to make sure that our organizations know who's going to get called, where's the call coming from, What sort of things are we going to do when an incident happens? It's really about making sure we're on the same page so that when the time does come, we're not looking up steps in a manual. Your team and our team, we're really operating on muscle memory because we've been through this. So these tabletop simulations are absolutely critical for real events. We're doing threat intelligence monitoring, sort of as I explained earlier. We also offer end user support. So some customers will allow their end users to call us directly instead of going through your IT team or your support desk. Say a nurse sees that his workstation is behaving of its own accord. Some customers have our number right there on the workstation that he could call us directly, explain what's going on, and we could walk him through how to disconnect that computer from the network, for instance. Strategic guidance, we are a tactical operations center, but we aren't only that. If you have a question about policy and maybe you're not sure, you need to write a policy for securing enterprise artificial intelligence that your users are starting to use. You could call in and ask us about that. We could share with you a policy template to help get you started. So really, the Seat Talk is about being a part of your team, about helping you respond to incidents, whether the alerts came through our detection manager or a product that you have. Having a team that does this all the time, that has responded to thousands of incidents, and we know it works, we know it doesn't work. Just having those experts on hand should the worst happen. I mentioned the Sensado ISAO earlier. Our CTOC is a sharing and analysis organization with DHS and CISA. Here's an example of our memorandum of understanding with the FDA. Again, this is publicly available. We'll send you these slides if you're interested. I talked a lot about this: threat detection, vulnerability analysis, HIPAA callouts for anything we see in your environment, threats, sources, analysis, reporting. This is our threat intelligence framework, TAC alerts, TIBs, governance, obviously, incident response, case management, and just general guidance and support. We're not just there for you when you see an alert, or more likely we see an alert. We're happy to support you however possible, just on a best effort scenario. And these aren't necessarily security related. During the height of the pandemic, we had a hospital on the East Coast that ran out of PPE, and they ran out of people they could call, and so they called us and said, hey, is there anything you can do? And we said, well, I'm not sure, but we sent out an alert to all of our CTOC customers, and we found a hospital on the West Coast that had a surplus, and they said, listen, we're happy to share if you can organize the shipping and the logistics, we can send some PPE. So we did that, and we got a shipment of protective equipment to this hospital on the East Coast about a few days later. So, I'd say give us a call. If we can't help, we'll let you know. But these are circumstances where we're here to help, and sometimes that's not even a cybersecurity problem. All right, and then widgets. Widgets has always struck me as a strange name, but think of this as a library of strategic content that you can have access to, and this really runs the gamut. Risk management, program development. One thing is we always write our content to fit into our compliance manager. So, this form and the form of our compliance manager, we use the same terms. So you can, when you look at a widget, you can type that right into the risk register, for instance. Maybe it's a vendor risk assessment form that you don't have. Whatever the case may be, at a customer, say we need to hire a CISO, but we're not really sure what we're looking for. So we wrote them a job description and put that into this library of widgets. Two of them that we're particularly proud of are first responder guidelines. So, we talk a lot about ransomware, but I'd say, the majority of actual sort of frontline clinical users I talk to have never actually seen it. I've never seen a computer get encrypted with ransomware. And so, we published a short video, about 5 minutes, of that you can use to train your users. What is it? What does it look like? What are you supposed to do? So we have a ransomware first responder guideline video. We also have a medical device cybersecurity incident first responder guidelines. When there's an alert coming from a ventilator and sort of you get a call from the CloudWave Sensado CTalk that says, there's a problem with the ventilator in ICU room, 604. What is it you're supposed to do? Now, we go through this training, and they'll understand that the clinical emergency response team needs to get to that room and care for the patient. We're going to take care of the IT side of it. You can't trust your medical devices in that room at the moment. Care for the patient, right? So understanding the sort of first responder responsibilities is absolutely important. So we've published a couple of videos that help train users on that, and these are examples of content in our library of widgets. And I'm going to wrap up here in just a second. One thing I do like to talk about is we are the market leader for KLAS in managed cybersecurity. This number, I'll point out, this is a snapshot in time. If you go and you look now, there's always some flex up down as time comes in. But we're mid 90s, and we are the market leader for healthcare in managed cybersecurity, and that's something we're very proud of. And so this is our cybersecurity as a service. As I mentioned, there's a lot here, from the compliance manager, the detection manager, response, connect to our 24/7 CTalk, and our strategic guidance and support. One thing I do want to end on is, Cynthia mentioned the Cybersecurity Insider Program at the top. This is a community-focused program that's absolutely free of charge, no obligation. We do monthly educational webinars. This gets you access to our attack alerts that I mentioned earlier. We do an annual virtual tabletop, and access to all of our past educational content. So highly suggest you sign up. Then later this month, we're doing a webinar on artificial intelligence in healthcare. We're going to talk about two different things. We're going to talk about AI being used by your organization and the challenges to securing that, but also AI being used by the attackers in healthcare and the problems that they cause. So Laura just posted in the chat a link to this Cybersecurity Insider Program if you want to follow that link and sign up if you're not already members. Again, it's just educational. We do no selling as part of the CIP. And with that, I'm gonna stop talking. I've just talked a lot, and I want to see if we have any questions. But if you're interested in learning more, we'd love to meet with each of you individually. Feel free to reach out to sort of anyone from the webinar or to Alex Wong. His email address is right here, who is our sort of West Coast account manager, and he'd be happy to set up some follow-ups. Laura, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. I'll wait a second to see if you'd like to ask anything. If not, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to me go on about our as a service program. Hopefully you learned something interesting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob, for your time, and we will send out an email after this presentation with a link to the recording. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.